Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. In this guide, you'll be learning the biggest mistakes that each rank makes that prevents them from climbing up the ladder. Most players know that they're not perfect and that they have room to improve, but what they struggle with is knowing exactly what to focus on, and that's what this video aims to address today. You'll find out what the most important skills are to focus on in order to improve, and to see the biggest results and increase in your rank. Speaking of which, before you watch the video, we'd love to hear what you think are the biggest mistakes that you're making that are holding you back from climbing along with your current rank. Not only will you be able to see if what you thought matches up with the experts, but could also inspire us to create a guide on one of those mistakes. And remember, what you find here on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement system on our website, SkillCapped.com. It's there you'll not only find over 700 premium Valorant guides, but we also have an expanding library of live Smurf commentaries, a feature no one else offers. These are by some of the top Valorant players, and they break down how you too can climb out of every rank in Valorant, ranging from Iron to Diamond. And all of this can be unlocked with no risk with our rank improvement guarantee, so click the link in the description below, head to skillcapped.com, and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so jumping straight into it, starting with the Iron rank. Now, for Iron, it is a bit obvious, and it would be easy to just say you need to improve your aim and be done with it, but that's not very helpful. For example, telling an Iron player that they need to focus on aiming at the head is honestly a bit too advanced. Instead, it's really the movement mechanics you need to be focused on in this rank. The biggest mistake Iron players make is running and gunning, meaning they shoot and move at the same time. Now, I know a lot of Iron players watching this may be thinking that they don't actually do this, but it's not as obvious as someone just spraying wildly running full speed. Often, Iron players are moving, causing their bullets to be completely inaccurate without them even realizing it. For example, check out this clip. It looks as if I'm shooting as soon as I come to a standstill. However, I'm actually making that super common Iron mistake of shooting too early before I've actually stopped moving. This is causing my first few bullets to be completely inaccurate as they are being fired right before I come to a standstill. And this is a huge problem, as these first few bullets in your spray are actually supposed to be your most accurate shots, as they're before the recoil kicks in. Your first 3 bullets should be going pretty much exactly where your crosshair is, and the next 6 bullets should mainly just be going upwards. The way you know if your bullets are inaccurate due to moving are from your tracers and bullet impact markers. If you see your tracers and bullet markers on your first several bullets go away significantly from where your crosshair is aimed, then you know you're moving and making this mistake. If you're in Iron, what I recommend is that you just focus on making sure you come to a standstill before you shoot your gun. Too often, players in this rank freak out and immediately begin shooting as soon as they see an enemy. You need to get rid of this habit. If you see an enemy, you need to train yourself to immediately come to a standstill, then aim your crosshair, and then shoot. Don't just immediately flick and start spraying and try to kill them as fast as you can. Instead, in Iron, you want to be developing the right aiming habits and mechanical patterns. Make sure you come to a standstill, aim, and make sure your crosshair is on the enemy first, and then fire your bullets. Slow it down and build up the right habits, and the speed will come later. Alright, now moving on to Bronze, and to be honest with you, Bronze is extremely close to Iron in skill. In fact, I would say really one of the only major differences between the two ranks are the movement and accuracy issues we just went over. Essentially, your gun's bullets are now accurate as you aren't moving, but you aren't as you haven't developed your aim. For players stuck in Bronze, the biggest mistake they're making that's preventing them from hitting Silver is something called crosshair placement. When you're playing Valorant, you need to make sure your crosshair is always at head level as you're moving around the map. Lower ranked players often mistakenly think that high ranked players just have some godlike aim where they're just flicking on opponent's head, but this is so far from the truth. Easily, the majority of kills found in Radiant, hell, even in pro play, stem from good crosshair placement. I'm talking like 70% or more of all kills are just straight up due to crosshair placement. By keeping your crosshair at headshot level, it means when you peek or an enemy peeks you, your crosshair is pretty much already on their head, and all you have to do is left click. If your crosshair isn't directly on their head, well, then you just need to make a very small adjustment. On top of this, that small adjustment, if you're at headshot level, will only be on the horizontal plane, meaning you don't have to try and move your mouse both vertically and horizontally at the same time. This is what makes good crosshair placement so overpowered. It gives you faster reaction time since your crosshair will always be close to the target you want to aim for, the opponent's head. You only have to make small adjustments so you have less room to miss, making you more accurate, and you only have to focus on adjusting on the horizontal plane, again, making you more accurate. Now, to improve your crosshair placement, you definitely want to run some deathmatch mode games. Either just walk around corners or just stand still and let the enemy peek you. Your goal here is just to have your crosshair at head level. When the opponent peeks you and you either die or get the kill, immediately then analyze and ask yourself, where was my crosshair relative to their head? This is so important to do because you need to know if you're aiming too low or too high, and then make that adjustment heading into the next fight. You quite literally want to think of yourself as heading into deathmatch to tune an instrument. Your crosshair will be completely off headshot level at first, but with each fight, you make those small fine-tune adjustments, and over time you develop that muscle memory of knowing exactly where head level is at all times. Alright, so you're not running and gunning, and you got some decent crosshair placement. It's at this point you'll find yourself in silver. Now, we could continue with the aiming theme, and if we did, it would be at this point you would want to specifically focus on improving your spray control. This would mean learning the different weapon spray patterns, knowing how much you need to pull down on a weapon and by how fast, along with being able to keep track of your gun sway and your peripheral vision to adjust left and right. However, if you're talking about the one mistake that if you fix you'll see immediate results in silver, it has to be trade killing. The amount of times I've seen a group of silver players moving into a site, one-person entry frags, and then no one swings to trade the kill is astounding. It's a huge flaw silver players have. Trade killing is an essential skill in Valorant, all the way up into Radiant and the pro level. It's fundamental. No one is just running around by themselves, dry peeking angles, taking 1v1s, and winning over and over again non-stop. Sure, this does happen as a highlight, but it's not the consistent way high-ranked players are getting kills. Instead, I would say around half of all kills from high-ranked players actually just comes from trade killing. They make sure that they stay close to their entry fragger, and when the entry fragger swings, they swing with them. That way, when the enemy is distracted shooting their teammate, you can shoot them back, basically getting a free kill and keeping the round even in numbers. If you're stuck in silver, of course you have to improve your aim. That goes without saying, but I promise you, if you just keep the concept of trade killing in the back of your mind, you'll immediately start top fragging and climbing to gold without even having to improve at anything else by that much. It's really that important. If you don't believe me, I did an Iron to Silver Classic Pistol only challenge, which you can find on our website, link in the description by the way, and one of the main ways I killed people with rifles and armor with nothing but a classic pistol was simply letting a teammate entry frag and then swinging after them and trade killing. It's really an insanely effective tool to use, and it's one that I rarely see silver players utilize. Alright, so now we're at gold, and I would say at this point a lot of gold players have better aim than most players realize, especially high-ranked players give them credit for. In fact, I would say that for the average gold player, their aim is actually their strongest skill, and it's mainly what helped them get to this rank. And for that reason, it's at this point you need to start focusing on improving your other skills and bring them up to the level of your aim. And no, this doesn't mean macro, rotations, or some kind of complicated strategy. Instead, it's about picking a single agent to main and mastering them. It's in gold, you need to become extremely good with your agent's abilities. So what exactly does this mean? Well, for the most part, it's going to mean learning ability lineups or the best usage cases for them. For example, if you play Killjoy, you need to learn the best setups for her on defense, but also the best lineups for her nanoswarms and ultimate on attack. No more just placing things down in spots that seem good to you. You need to do some research into the best setups and lineups and what the pros are doing. That's why we here at SkillCapped create setup and lineup guides for agents, as we know just how pivotal they are to climbing the ranks. Some other examples of ability mastery would be if you play Sage, knowing the best wall spots and slow lineups. If you play Raze, you need to know how to double satchel boost correctly and what are the best spots to do it from. You would also need to know the proper boombot lineups, no more just placing it down randomly and hoping it spots all the angles. And one other example would be on Jett, knowing that using the dash into updraft combo is better than doing an updraft into dash combo, as with the dash into updraft, you create the sweeping motion that is significantly harder to hit. It's in gold, you really need to focus on specializing and mastering one agent, getting the maximum value out of their abilities. Once you've gone through this process, you'll be at a higher rank, at which point you can consider repeating the process with a new agent and expanding your agent pool, but don't make the common mistake of either constantly bouncing between different agents, or simply maining one agent but never doing any kind of research and instead just grinding games and expecting that you'll somehow figure out the best way to play them. And no, this doesn't mean sitting down and studying your agent for hours at a time like it's homework. It can simply just be watching a guide on your agent once a week. It can be finding a high-ranked streamer that mains your agent and watching a bit of him every now and then to get some tips and tricks. The point is, you need at least some kind of active research on your agent paired with then practicing and applying what you've learned. Alright, so now we're in Platinum, the start of the higher ranks. And I just want to mention, in all ranks, you have to improve your aim and mechanics. Just because I don't specifically mention to improve your aim for a given rank in this guide doesn't mean to ignore it completely. I want you to assume from this point forward, you still need to run some deathmatch, you need to use some aim trainers, go into practice mode, you're still actively improving your aim and muscle memory. So just because we're not specifically saying to focus on aim does not mean you need to stop. It's expected at this point you have some kind of aim training routine that you actively do on a regular basis. So with that disclaimer out of the way, it's in Platinum, you need to start focusing on the macro and strategic aspects of Valorant. Platinum players actually have a very solid baseline of mechanics. However, their strategic understanding of the game is, well, extremely lacking. You'll often find a ton of players in Platinum that have solely relied on their mechanics to carry them, and so this leaves you with the opportunity to gain a massive advantage over them. So obviously, just saying to improve strategically isn't going to be helpful at all, as there's no way I can go over all the different strategies and macro play within this video either. However, what I can do is tell you what the most important strategic aspects are to focus on and what will get you the most bang for your buck. Let's start with attack. Firstly, when you're on attack, be willing to rotate if your attack gets stalled out. What I mean by this is if you're attacking a site at the start of the round and the enemy successfully smokes it and mollies or gets a pick and just prevents you from pushing into the site at a relatively fast rate, then you need to begin rotating off. Why is this so important? Because while your attack is being stalled, the defenders on the other parts of the map are actively rotating to the bomb site that you're trying to attack. Don't hesitate either. Make this call to rotate very quick. Either hit the site fast and commit to the take, or if you get stalled, just immediately call for the rotate off. This is a very simple and effective way to approach attack. Don't just make the mistake of thinking it's all about 5-man rushing whatever site you picked in the buy phase. Be willing to rotate off and recognize it early. It will pay dividends. Now, what about defense? In Platinum, the biggest macro mistake players make is not rotating fast enough on defense. As a general rule, your default response on defense should be to rotate fast to wherever an enemy is spotted. It's not until you begin getting punished for rotating too fast do you then want to adjust and start playing slower. However, the vast majority of the time in Platinum, fast rotates on defense will not be punished and instead will be key in you winning rounds. For example, say you pushed out on defense and you spot no one on your side of the map. Immediately call for the rest of your team to stack that other site. Maybe you're just playing passive in sight, 15 seconds pass at the start of the round, you haven't seen anyone. Suddenly, an enemy is spotted by a defender on the other side. Yep, that means it's time to instantly rotate. I know this may sound like you're leaving yourself open to be punished for fast rotating, but what a lot of players don't understand is that fast rotating is a completely key fundamental part to high-ranked Valorant. What I mean by this is that often you're rotating fast to defend the site, then the enemy's attack gets stalled, so then you immediately have to fast rotate back to your previous location. You really need to get comfortable with this fast back and forth rotational style on defense, and this begins with committing to that first fast rotate as your default response and then adjusting from that point forward. Alright, so now you're in Diamond, which is honestly probably the one rank that players who are actively trying to improve end up getting hard stuck in. Diamond can be hard as you can find some extremely good aimers and mechanical players in this rank. Also, let's be honest here, and let's address the elephant in the room. A lot of players will get boosted to Diamond. Not to mention that a lot of players can climb to Diamond, then kind of stop actively playing, only coming back to the game every so often with no interest in climbing any higher. In addition to all of this, you'll start running into pre-mades and unbalanced matchmaking a lot more in Diamond. This is because there are a lot less players in this rank, and so matchmaking will have to compromise and start games that may not exactly be fair, with a full 5-man stack on the enemy team against just a 3 stack and 2 solo players as an example, just to avoid a queue time from being way too long. I know I'm not exactly making Diamond sound fun, and it may not be what you wanted to hear, but hey, I'm being as honest as I can and telling you what will actually help you climb out of it. You can expect Diamond to be the biggest test to you mentally than any other rank. It's at this point you're getting close to your skill ceiling, and so improvement becomes slow. You have to put in more work to see slower results than before, while simultaneously the matchmaking becomes the most frustrating and mentally testing. This is why the biggest mistake Diamond players make that prevents them from hitting Immortal is having a poor mentality. You need to stop what's referred to as result-oriented thinking. This is when you begin second-guessing yourself and changing how you approach the game based off of recent results. Diamond is going to be a grind. There's absolutely no way around it. It will be your biggest grind compared to any other rank. So you need to adjust your mentality to being one of long-term goals and about the process and journey rather than the results. Ignore the game-to-game outcomes and pay attention to more long-term trends. You should have an aiming practice routine at this point. You should be analyzing your own games. You should have found resources to study and the best way to play your agent. Basically, by this point, you should have the training process in place to improve. It's just a matter of not tilting and consistently applying this process over time. It's also about being cognizant of the fact that improvement will come slower. And at this point, it's about having good habits and training routines and then applying them consistently. Grinding for a week or two and still being in Diamond or going up and down in ranks and ending up in the same place you started, this is all to be expected. Again, don't focus on the results, or you'll just become too emotionally invested in the outcome of each game and start tilting yourself. Instead, you need to trust in the process and realize that it's about having a good mentality and consistent practice at this point. Essentially, just embrace the grind. Alright, so next up, we have Immortal, the final obstacle standing in the way of Radiant. And to be completely upfront with you, everything covered in the Diamond section heavily applies to Immortal players as well. However, there's one key mistake Immortal players make more than Diamond players, and that's relying too much on solo play and not coordinating with their team. And no, it's not because they have a massive ego or are just toxic, well, sometimes it is, but usually it's for a different reason that's actually pretty logical if you think about it. Immortal players just finished climbing out of Diamond, where you'll find some of the most volatile and unbalanced games, and so they naturally would gravitate towards a more solo carry playstyle to help them get out of Diamond. Essentially, they wouldn't want to rely on their teammates since their skill could vary so much game to game. At the same time, the skill level in Diamond can still leave you enough room to actually solo carry. However, this kind of starts to come to an end once you hit Immortal Immortal. At this rank, having that solo carry mindset will often be more of a detriment than an asset. Just think about it. You simply aren't going to be able to consistently 1v5 against a bunch of Immortal and Radiant players while you're climbing. Instead, you will have to rely on your teammates to perform and do well alongside you. This means cutting out the toxicity, the tilt, the blaming, things that are going to make teammates perform worse. At the end of the day, you will actually need them to perform at their best if you want to climb. Similarly, you'll need to communicate or at least coordinate with your team and listen to calls. If your team is grouping to push A, you can't just ignore them and go off and do your own thing and expect a solo carry like in other ranks. And also by communication, I mean asking for specific smokes, asking teammates to swing with you if they aren't. If you see an entry fragger not flashing in properly, tell them to flash in and that you'll swing with them. It's in Immortal, you need to start viewing Valorant as much more of a team game. Another example could be seeing that a teammate is getting stomped trying to hold a site on defense. You need to be proactive and call for a swap. Switch things up and try putting another player there or swapping a different player that's currently performing better. In general, just be active round to round with your coordination and communication. What went wrong last round and what can you do with your team to improve this round? You want to avoid starting rounds with no calls or communication. You want at least some very basic plans at the start of each round so that everyone can be on the same page. Trust me, one of the worst things that can happen in an Immortal game is 5 players dead silent. They play out like 6 or 7 rounds, winning maybe 1 or 2 of them before they start communicating and trying to turn it around. At that point, it's often too late. You want to be proactive with team play from the first round to the last. You don't have to make crazy high-level calls or anything like that. Just make sure there are some simple, easy to follow plans for the team to coordinate around and that you make simple, easy to follow adjustments round to round. And finally, after all of this hard work, you find yourself at Radiant. Pro teams are sending you $1 million contracts. You're getting recognized everywhere the one time a month you go outside, and most importantly, if anyone disagrees with your opinion on Valorant, you can slap them down with the appeal to authority fallacy. Let them know you're Radiant and ask them what their rank is and automatically win any argument on the internet, which as we know is really why we did this in the first place. But in all seriousness, if you made it to Radiant, you're one of the top 150 players in your region. Improving at this point is either going to be putting in more hours or extremely niche, advanced improvements to your game that are tailored to that player specifically. Something that is beyond the scope of this guide and not exactly useful to 99.6% of the player base. But if you are someone who is serious about improving and you want to win more gunfights and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at skillcapped.com, link in the description below. Otherwise, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides with one goal in mind, helping you become a better player. And while you're down there, leave a comment and let us know what you think is the biggest mistake that you're making that's preventing you from climbing, as we'd love to hear and we read all the comments. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching until the end, and we'll catch you in the next one.